Had the interview, felt great. I'm on cloud nine. I get back to upstate New York. I get called the next day. You have to come back. There's something wrong with the drug test.
How do you get from being a kid who's into sports, and maybe let's even back up a little bit further than that. Were you, I assume you were an athlete.
I grew up playing youth sports as anybody else, in-season sports. Now, in this day and age, kids specialize a lot earlier than they did when you and I were growing up. But, I played soccer in the fall, baseball in the spring, played a little bit of CYO basketball. Never an outstanding athlete, but I loved it. And as a kid, I would always say there's really two types of sports fans when you're a kid. There's the one who reads the back of the baseball cards and memorizes the statistics, and the one who watches somebody on TV and says, oh, I want to go out in the backyard and try and replicate that play or that dive or that swing. And I was the latter. I wanted to go out and just play. You knew the big stats, but I didn't memorize, what was his batting average in 1983, and that just wasn't me. So growing up, yes, always a sports fan. Times growing up, I would have my little tape recorder and a microphone. I would sit in my room and pretend that I was on the radio. Usually more like a music DJ, but my little radio station was WJAY, and I would sit in my room, and that was my radio experience. Never thinking that was going to be my career. Looking back on it now as an adult, looking back, say, wow, I've always been interested in that, but that was never front of mind.
When did that shift happen for you?
The shift actually happened because of my procrastination. And I'll get to that in a second, but
That was unintentionally very funny. Okay.
Pun intended. My parents kept a lot of the stuff I did in school, and at some point, I think it was early in high school, you do one of those career evaluation things. You fill out the form and you color in the bubbles, and it tells you what you're supposed to be. I found it years later, and what I wound up doing as an adult professionally really was what it told me in high school that I was going to be doing. And I said, wow, that maybe there's some merit to these things. I went to college. I went to college for communication, journalism, and expected to be a print writer, newspapers, magazines. My junior year was coming to an end. I said, oh, well, this is the summer where I need an internship. And of course, the school year ends in beginning of May or something. And I'm probably there mid-April looking for an internship. And I go to the internship office, and without laughing at me, they kind of laughed at me and said, what are you coming in here now for? The internship director was more than kind and knew somebody in Connecticut who was working at a radio station. He was from the same school. I went to Marist College in upstate New York in Poughkeepsie. And he was a graduate of Marist. Called him up, said, listen, I've got this guy who's going to be in Connecticut for the summer. You want to take him on as an intern? He said, sure. So I went and I worked in radio for that summer between my junior and senior year. Because it was a small FM pop music station, the news guy was the morning show sidekick. That was the extent of the news department for this station. So that radio station was the official radio station for the local outdoor concert venue in Connecticut that summer. So my job as the intern, because he couldn't stay up late at night, so my job was to go to all these concerts, interview all the acts that came through, and so I was backstage the entire summer interviewing all these rock acts. Metallica, Debbie Gibson, New Kids on the Block.
That's awesome.
Mickey Dolenz, the Chicago, the Beach Boys, just the full gamut, not just one genre. And I came out of that summer saying, okay, this is cool. Radio, I think, is what I want to do. And that really just kind of kicked it in.
The more I talk to successful people, no matter how they define success, I find over and over and over again that chance encounters, which is to me is a form of luck. What do you think the role of luck in success is?
I would not be at ESPN without luck. When I graduated college, I started working at a small radio station. And then after working there for, I think, a couple of years, I was being laid off as part of budget cuts. The day that I had that conversation with the boss, I went home thinking, what am I going to do? My phone rings with a friend of mine from a radio station across the street. I, to this day, have no idea if he knew I was getting laid off or if it was just dumb luck, saying, why don't you come work with us? 2 weeks later, I'm working over there. Never had a gap in work. Got a 2-week notice at one job, started 2 weeks later at the station across the town. And that station was bigger and better, and people from that station it was a launching pad for people. We had somebody I worked with went to Bloomberg, somebody else went to Showtime, CNN Radio, CNBC, and then me, ESPN. So it was really, and there was one other who went to WFAN in New York and now is at ABC and ESPN. So it really turned out to be a launching pad. When I was working at that second station, to set the scene, ESPN in its inception, ESPN Radio, was broadcasting only Saturday and Sunday nights. The network would only broadcast Saturday and Sunday nights. So everybody that was working at ESPN Radio came in, they worked somewhere else Monday through Friday, they would come into Connecticut for Saturday and Sunday, work the 2 nights, and then back off to their quote unquote regular jobs. And one of those people I worked with in the Hudson Valley of New York. And his name was Jeff. Jeff would work Monday through Friday at our radio station. He would go over to ESPN on the weekends. He got married. They were going to start a family. No longer could he work 7 days a week. ESPN asked him, Jeff, do you know anybody who could do your job? Oh, well, there's Jay. So ESPN called me. And I mean, it's a long drawn out story, but you talk about luck. That was right place, right time. They called me. I drove to Connecticut to interview at ESPN. As an aside, they had, at the time, I don't think it's part of the practice anymore, but you had to have a drug test coming in to work. That was one of the first things I did before the interview. Had the interview, felt great. I'm on cloud 9. I get back to upstate New York. I get called the next day. You have to come back. There's something wrong with the drug test.
Oh my God.
My mind is racing. This was the time where, did I eat a lemon poppy seed muffin? Did that cause a negative test result?
Sitcom moment.
All these things are rushing through my head. How did I blow my opportunity at ESPN? They couldn't tell me what was wrong with the drug test. It wound up being a chain of command thing, so they never even tested anything. But I didn't know that, and I'm sweating, and I'm like, I've blown my chance at ESPN. Came back, everything was fine, and here we are now. But I remember those couple of hours just being absolutely panicked that what could have possibly gone wrong.
Wow.
But so yes, the 2 major lucky moments over the course of my adult life have put me there.